Assault of the Giants, a D&D board game. And even if you look at the box, it looks like, at least at first glance, some D&D board games like we saw in the last couple of years, such as Castle Ravenloft, Wrath of Ashardalon, Legend of Drizzt. But then you look at the back of the box and you see that it is a different beast. Not a dungeon crawler, not a tactical game, but I would say a campaign game. It depicts large movements of people, tribes on a large map over an extended period of time. The players take on the role of tribes of giants, which is interesting and unusual, refreshing, I would say. The giant slayers now are the enemies, it's not you. And they go around and try to accomplish their objectives. So the game is non-symmetrical in the sense that different players have different abilities, different stats, different things that they try to accomplish. But it's not strikingly asymmetrical in the way that you have, for example, in Chaos in the Old World. I believe that the asymmetry is much deeper than here. Assault of the Giants, 3 to 6 players. You look at the box, it has some mighty plastic components in there, a lot of bits, fairly long rulebook, everything seems to scream Ameritrash in terms of style of game. But then you look at the design and you will see that, in truth, all of these bits of plastic and all of these small rules and exceptions really revolve around an incredibly simple and incredibly linear single core mechanic that is incredibly Euro-ish in nature. So a hybrid between Ameritrash and Eurogame, maybe a first example of a new style, Eurotrash? I don't know. Let's take a closer look at Assault of the Giants, and then I'll try to share some ideas with you about gameplay and what I thought about the game and what my group thought about the game. Here's the board of the game. As you can see, it is divided in various regions, and some will be the home regions of the Giants, and players will not be allowed to attack each other's region in the first part of the game. The map looks good, the board looks good, but it's also a little bit busy. There are some giants that tend to disappear a little bit into the background, and when the map is busy with a lot of other stuff, I wish that the map maybe look a little less nice but a little more clean. Players control tribes or races of giants, and so each player will have a different set of game pieces. The game is asymmetrical, so you have different game pieces, different abilities, but there are some standard things. Each race has 2 champions represented by these large and really impressive miniatures. That probably will be one of the main reasons of attraction, certainly when you see them on the illustration on the box. If you like miniatures, you'll probably already be thinking about ways to paint them. Definitely very impressive. So each player has 2 champions, represented again by impressive miniatures, and then you have a card that tells you the stats of the champion, because all the champions don't have information printed on them. Then you have a leader, or say like a super good, a super powerful giant, that is represented by a token and also with a card with some extra information. And then you have your regular units. Again, they can be regular or elite. They are the giants that are represented by cardboard tokens. This is mighty unusual that you have pieces on the board that they come from different that represent practically different individuals from the same tribe, but some are represented by plastic and some are represented by cardboard. There's also another problem. I mean, I really wish that they had everything as a token or everything as a giant. Just reducing a little bit would have been great. Just for practical reasons, because when the map starts having a lot of giants there, then I just have to move my head around and double check to see if there is indeed a little giant hiding behind there. And again, the board can get pretty cluttered, and I found it pretty annoying that sometimes the tokens would hide behind these majestic sculptures. So it looks good, but I think that committing to either plastic or cardboard would have been better in terms of gameplay. Speaking of gameplay, each player has an event or two. This is a special personal event when you meet the conditions of the event and you have a rune. This is a resource that you can discard. Then you complete the event and you gain the benefit, which is a certain number of OP. OP are ordning points. For those of you who are not in the know, ordning is sort of like the social status of giants in the game. Is simply quantified by points. The more ordning points you have, the cooler you are in the eyes of the other giants, and that's what you're trying to do here, to be the coolest giant on the block. So you have those events. Also, there are generic events that do not belong to any player. They will be on the board. Very often they're just like be in a place and spend a certain rune, and you gain again some OP, some ordering points, with some other possible effects, but the general idea remains the same. At the beginning of your turn, so what you can do is to claim an event. It can be your personal event, it can be one of the public events that are available that round. It's optional, because you may not be able to claim an event, but after you claim an event, your main turn starts, and during your main turn, you must play an action from your deck of action cards. Each player has a deck which is almost the same, with just some slight differences. There is a special card that each tribe has. Other than that, it's the actions are the same. You play the card, and pretty much the game is as simple as you play the card and do what it says and follow the instructions. So when with this card, I can spend 4 recruit points, and with recruit points I can buy new giants that can go on the board. Trades, there are resources, those are the cards that will give you the runes that I mentioned, but you also may get other advantages, other types of things. Food, with this really disturbing illustration, artifact that allows you to cast powerful spells. So trade is the action that when you play it, it allows you to trade resources with the deck or with other giants, and they have to accept the trade. They have to give you a number of cards, resources equal to the number of resources you're giving you. Make up to 4 unit maneuvers, so that's make up to 4 unit maneuvers. That pretty much means moving to another area. You cannot enter areas that contain enemies unless you're able to travel through and then to reach an area which is friendly or empty. In fact, even combat is from region to region. You don't enter the region to attack. But if you move through a region that has enemies in it, then you have to pay a penalty, which can be one of your giants takes a wound, or you have to give a resource. Pretty much either you pay a fee to go through, or you get pummeled as you go. Attack an enemy region or invade an empty region. Draw spell cards, discard one and keep the other one. Draw resource cards. Again, this is a unique card. Each player has a different one. Activate your leader, and again, do what it says, and we're back here. Now, I showed you the top of the cards, but as you can see, there is a bottom also, which actually is the most interesting element in the game. These lines, well, these arrows, they point to right or left, and they pretty much mean take 1 giant slayer, take 1 X per card that the arrow is pointing to. So, for example, if I've already played, say, these 3 cards, so when I play the cards in my turn, I'll play them face up in front of me, and they stay in front of me in a line from left to right. Then when I play a card, this one says make up to 4 unit maneuvers, plus make 1 unit maneuver per card that this points to. So now I have a total of 7 maneuvers. Heal a wounded unit, but then I can also take a giant slayer action per card that this is pointing to. So when you have arrows that point towards the left, that's a one-time thing. You put it down, you count the cards, and you collect the benefit. You may also have, however, cards that point to the right, and cards that point to the right are permanent benefits. You get them for as long as you have a line of cards there, and the longer is the line of cards, the more powerful is the advantage that you get. So you don't get your cards back in your hand automatically. You need to play the rest card. When you do that, then you draw all of your command cards back into your hand and you continue. So sometimes you will have people playing very big combos, and if you do that, basically you'll play all of your cards, or almost all of them, you'll get them back and you'll start again. Basically you'll get your cards back only once before the game is over. Otherwise, you'll do, say, a small combo, etc., then a small combo. You can do that maybe 2 or 3 times, but still not much more than that. I really like this idea. I think it's a really smart idea. It feels incredibly Eurogamey. I think that this engine, this mechanic, I would have imagined that it would be paired with some, say, trading goods in the Mediterranean area during the Renaissance, stuff like that, or making cars in the early 20th century, this sort of thing. But no, it's about giants going around and pummeling each other. In one of the cards, you saw the Giant Slayer actions. There are these 3 guys here that go around and want to look good, and their main obsession is to kill giants. Each has a card, each has a miniature. You will want to paint them because they're not so easy to tell apart. I mean, it's interesting for scale. But what they do is when you play a card that allows you to do a Giant Slayer action, then you're controlling these Giant Slayers and you use to attack other players, and if they do damage to the opponents, then alright, good for you. Because you gain ordering points. Now, combat. Oh, combat. When you declare combat, suppose this guy is attacking that poor kid there. The defender and the attacker will pick up combat dice. There are 6 standard combat dice, and then each player has a unique combat die. And they're of different colors, but at least in my copy, these dice, the colors didn't come out very vibrant, and so it's not that easy to tell which one is which. For this one, we had to go by exclusion to assign it. Actually, this one also pretty much. The number of dice that you roll, or combat dice, depends on the strength that you have. This is the strength that the giant has. And again, remember, the champions have their strength printed not on their token, but on a card. And so, for example, the champion of the Storm Giants has a strength of 5. So when you attack, you take a number of blank dice equal to your strength -1, and you add your personal die. Or you can say you put 5, you put that number, you take that number of dice, but 1 is to be your personal die. And as the attacker, you roll it. Each club is a hit, each shield is a defense. Then you may have these effects that are usually hits, unless there are in your line of cards here effects that say convert these symbols into attacks or into defenses. So after you roll, you will have a number of hits and defenses possibly, and you mark it here. Okay, I have 2 attacks there. I also have 2 defenses. No, I have 4 because there's a game effect that turns those into shields. So I mark that for the defense, for the attacker. Then I repeat the procedure. For the defender. Suppose the defender only rolls 3 dice. And I also mark those. The X is always a miss. I have 3 hits, and suppose that an effect turns that into shields. As simple as that. You mark the hits there, and then you apply them. Now, this is the number of points that it takes to kill a giant. If you inflict a wound on a giant, but not equal to or higher than this, the giant is simply wounded, and you flip it. And then if later the giant takes another hit, which is not sufficient, not equal to or higher than, the giant is killed. If the giant is healthy and you inflict that many damage or higher, the giant is killed immediately. Which kind of makes sense until you realize that, say, this giant has a health of 8, and they say a hit that doesn't kill him wounds him. That means that if I inflict 1 hit on him, he'll be wounded. And if I inflict another hit on him, he'll be dead. It took me 2 hits. Or if I inflict 7 hits on him, he'll be wounded. And then I inflict 7 hits on him, well, he'll die and go away. That means that taking 2 hits or taking 14 is exactly the same. Thematically, this makes not much sense. Oh yes, then the defenses absorb hits, but I think you figured that out. So, strange combat system. I guess they wanted to keep it streamlined, so you don't have to record how many hit points, how many wounds each giant has, but it makes for a kind of really weird combat system. In any case, the players will perform actions around the board, and their task is to collect ordering points. There will be 2 pools of ordering points, and when the first pool is depleted, the players have taken it, and the second phase and last phase of the game begins. The main difference is that at that point, players can attack each other's home regions that they couldn't do at the beginning. And when the second pool of ordering points is depleted, everybody still, well, you continue taking turns until everybody has the same number of turns. At that point, the game is over and players count points, and the player with the most ordering is the coolest, most powerful, more respected giant in the region, and is also the winner of the game. So my group and I with it was not impressed. We were really not taken by the game, not excited. Why so? Well, as I said, the components first do not make it easy or entirely free-flowing as it should be. The components would just allow you to assess the design and just to worry about your choices, not to have to look around and to be sure that you haven't missed a small token because it is blended into the background, it's hiding behind a majestic plastic miniature. The colors of some of the cards are very similar to one another. For example, here are some public cards, say the resource cards, that almost look like the personal colors of one of the tribes. The spell cards almost look like the color of one of the tribes. Those dice are hard to tell apart. Some of the giants, again, at first sight, like the cloud giants, the stone giants, it wasn't all that easy to tell them apart. The color palette was not very marked, did not help to mark different pieces of the design. Overall, it just seemed to me that the game looks a little too good for its own good. The aesthetic is great, but some of the components are not fully practical. When it comes to gameplay, I really liked the core idea of the cards in a line. You can create powerful combos or choose to get the cards back and repeat the same actions. So very different strategies. To me, this is great Euro gaming, an economic idea, a single idea that yet generates a lot of possibilities, a lot of options and interesting decisions, and different players who go about it in incredibly different ways. However, small digression. Recently I've read about the history of Dominion, how Dominion came to be. And it turned out originally it was a very complicated fantasy game in which the deck building was just an element. It was an element that was used to give equipment to the players, to the characters. Until the designer realized that that element was fun and strong enough that you could ditch the fantasy adventuring and build a game around it, and that was good enough, and that's how Dominion came to be. That's how the first deck building game came to be. This is how I feel about Assault of the Giants and this idea of put cards in a row, etc, etc. I think that the game would be much better if you had this Euro idea, and instead of having this large board and plastic engines, etc, etc, you had a very simple, very linear board with just a couple of options. You're buying resources, collecting a set, this sort of thing. Because unfortunately, to me, what happens on the board didn't work. It did not feel engaging at all. Problems are, well, at the beginning, it will take a while for the players to figure out all that they can do, so the game will be slow, and maybe it'll take a game or two before players really start moving around. But then when gameplay happens, it's just, I didn't find it all that interesting. I have an objective to complete. I'm going to move there. Yes, I need to optimize and try to figure out how to get there. The next good thing to do in most cases seemed obvious, and when it wasn't, well, look around for a small hill giant, slap him in the face, try to collect some points. Oh, look, now another objective comes out. Now I'll go and get it. The game had a strange combination to me between very slow and very fast. Maybe we're playing with 4 players and the 3 players are fighting battles and it takes a while before those are resolved. Then it's my turn and I decide to do a single thing that allows me to collect a resource, and then I'm sitting there as other people are fighting battles. It just so happens that maybe going for very quick, very simple, very basic actions that time is what matters. Also, if people are playing the Giant Slayer actions, they can be interesting, but they can really slow down gameplay. It felt like the pace was very uneven between turns that were too long and turns that felt like almost like, did I take my turn or did I pass? Oh no, yes, I did take my turn, but it was so quick and so simple and so obvious. So the pace somehow wasn't really all that engaging. Also, for a game in which you have non-symmetrical elements, in which you have a fairly small board in terms of possibilities and many spaces on the board. I'm talking about the physical size. It's fairly small and claustrophobic, so people are elbowing each other all the time. It still felt there wasn't all that much interaction, and that to me was surprising, but that was the case. I was seeing other tribes doing some actions that were specific to them that did not affect me, that I had no resonance in the game whatsoever. It simply gave them points. I know, as the Cloud Giants, I have a flying city, I moved the token with the flying city, and now it's in a certain location, I score points. Other players have no way of stopping me from doing that, no way of interacting with it, no effects, no consequences from my collecting those points, but for the fact that I collect those points, and there are fewer. And then the Stone Giants are ravaging, are performing their special action, and I have no idea what it is. And I asked the owning player, and he's like, oh yeah, that doesn't affect you in any way. Yes, so from time to time we're going to be slapping each other in the face, but frankly, if there are other actions that I see available to my race allow me to collect points easily and not to risk my giants, I'll go for those. So it almost felt like the interaction very often was an afterthought, at least like a last-ditch action. Well, yeah, there's nothing else good I can do. Let's go and slap the hill giants in the face. For the most part, and that surprised me, it felt, and my group all felt it, that it tended that there was a large component of multiplayer solo. Not dramatically, so not the only thing that happened, because battles still happen, but they usually were in the first option. Again, you may have the player that just loves to fight and is going to build all of his or her strategy around fighting, but that is just an option. In the spirit of the game, is entirely possible to keep a low profile, to ignore all that happens, and then you're playing pretty much a fairly dry Euro game, which is about managing resources, creating an efficient engine, creating a good chain of actions so that you can move faster, collect more resources, and collect more points. It feels an extremely Eurogamey. There's extremely Eurogamey core under this giant pile of a very trashy component. And to me, it almost really felt like the very trashy elements detracted from the core element without adding much. I didn't feel like fighting was the main element here. I felt it was just one of the options, and frankly, wasn't always the most attractive one. If I attacked somebody, very often it was for the fun of it. But again, there should be stronger in-game incentives. Again, I'm not saying that attacking other people right and left is not a viable strategy, but it's a risky one, and there are the ones that just seem more profitable. For all intents and purposes, we were all playing our own little strategies with very little interaction. So also because of that, gameplay felt disjointed. I was just sitting there looking at people doing their own stuff that didn't touch me at all, didn't affect me at all. It was my turn, I would do my thing, do my little search, get my little artifact that didn't really affect anybody. So I wasn't like really taken into the action because I never had the sense that there was like a large scale campaign, a political system, diplomacy, and wars going on. It just felt like people were going after their own goals, bumping into each other from time to time, and that was it. Also, for a game, it's Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast, comes with these miniatures. There are just so many thematic glitches, so many cases in which the theme goes against the mechanics and vice versa. I mentioned the fact that 2 hits or 14 hits may just be exactly the same for a giant. The champions actually do not have a healthy and wounded side. They need to be, you need to hit them pretty much to kill them in a single blow to deal enough damage to go over the maximum health. Otherwise, nothing happens. They just absorb all of those points. And that, again, is just a little funny, and other weird things happen. I said when you cross a region of another person, you have to pay, give them resources, or take a penalty. However, the champion cannot take the penalty. The champion cannot be wounded. So wounds or resources, if you only have a champion you want to cross a region and you don't have resources, then the champion, which is the mightiest creature on that planet, stays there and says, sorry, I can't enter. I could kill anything and anybody in here because they're just a small little stupid giant in there. I'm the champion, but I can't do it because I don't have resources and I can't pay the penalty. I'm so strong I can't pay the penalty. I cannot be wounded. It just feels very gamey, and there are just the glitches like that constantly in which I don't have a PhD in giantology, but I am conversant enough with the conventional, the fantasy genre, that there are just many cases like, I don't know, this is not how giants should behave. This is not how a fantasy world should work. So I had exactly the kind of disconnection between theme and mechanics that I expect from many Eurogames, that I don't mind in Eurogames because I know what I expect. And also because the Eurogames, I haven't bought gigantic miniatures made of plastic, little cubes. So to start with, the components in Eurogames are not meant to be particularly evocative. Here I have components which are incredibly evocative. They seem to promise an immersive experience. And at the end, I find myself playing what feels like a very abstract game. The evocative element distracts me from the abstract hero element, and vice versa. Just they don't go together. It's like water and oil. It's like there are all these elements that have been tossed together in the witch's cauldron, and they are not mixing with each other. They remain each in their own bubble. There's certain friction against one another, and they just don't coalesce into an organic design. So, summarizing, all of my gripes, as you can see, are many. The pace feels discontinuous, gameplay feels disjointed, interaction is not, there isn't enough interaction really to keep me interested in what the players are doing. The theme is not there. The thing that I like the most, which is the card engine, I really think there's a great idea in there. I hope that one day that is brought to life in a simpler game that emphasizes that. But as is, it seems to me that most of the game works as a distraction for the one element that really works and really is interesting. Also, one other gripe, but ultimately the game feels too long and too short at the same time. It feels pretty long to play because it takes a while, but at the end you realize that you played all of your cards once and maybe you play them once again, not all of them, and the game is over. So it feels like it takes a long time, and you really get the sense that once you've built your engine and achieved some of your goals and you're there ready to grab something big or the big reward, then the game is over. So I don't know what I'm doing. That's an impersonation of a storm giant when he electrocutes himself with one of the lightning bolts. Didn't like it very much. I was excited at the beginning. I thought it was gonna be really great, although it seemed strange to me to have that very dry abstract card engine around these glorious maneuvers of Mighty Giants. And at the beginning I was excited. My excitement decreased fast during gameplay and was not recovered at the end. I don't know, very disappointing experience for me and my group. Song to the Giants, I had great hopes, and well, in the end, I did not enjoy the game.